I want to tell you a little bit about the organization that brought Rachel here. Artadia is a national nonprofit organization that supports visual artists with unrestricted merit-based awards and professional opportunities. In the past 16 years, Artadia has awarded more than $3 million, I feel like Oprah, more than $3 million to over 300 artists in the cities of Boston, Atlanta, Chicago, Houston, Los Angeles, New York, and San Francisco. Launched in 2015, Art and Dialogue is a unique program series designed to foster exchange between Artadia awardees, curators, and art enthusiasts in each Artadia Awards city. Art and Dialogue furthers Artadia's vision of creating a vibrant national network of artists and art professionals by inviting a curator to visit each of its 7 cities, to conduct studio visits with Artadia's talented awardees, and to present a public program at a local partner institution. So if you followed that whole web, that's how Rachel came to be at the Rose Art Museum. And today we're pleased to welcome Rachel Adams, the Associate Curator of University of Buffalo Art Galleries, for Artadia's inaugural Art and Dialogue program in Boston. Rachel was having a rich experience in the city, conducting studio visits with 10 Boston-based Artadia awardees, driving herself around the city, so let's give her some props for that. The participating artists have been featured in diverse exhibitions in Boston and nationally, and the studio visits with Rachel will provide each with a valuable opportunity for feedback and dialogue. Rachel will also capture her impressions of Boston and the artists living and working here in a short essay that will be published on Artadia's website later this year. Artadia is grateful to the Rose Museum, to all that helped make this program possible, to Rachel, and to all of you for being here today. So with that, I'd like to welcome Rachel Adams to the Rose Art Museum.
I wanted to thank Artadia for inviting me. It's been really nice to come to Boston and meet a whole bunch of new artists, which is really what I'm very passionate about, as you can tell. And to the Rose for hosting this program amongst all of these amazing paintings, which feel very empowering behind me. So I am going to talk about past curatorial work that I've done and then 2 upcoming projects that I'm working on. As Ingrid said, I am the new curator at the University at Buffalo Art Galleries, and I just recently moved there from Austin, Texas, so you'll see projects from Austin, but you also see projects from Portland, Oregon, where I was doing a residency last year, as well as San Francisco, where I went to graduate school with these 2 lovely ladies in the front row over there. So starting with one exhibition in San Francisco, this is Interrupting a Beam of Light. I guess to give a little bit of an overview, I mostly work with emerging artists, or at least up until this point I've worked with mostly emerging artists, and really being able to hopefully foster their creativity and give them opportunities. That's really something that I'm very passionate about. I hope to be able to fund projects, commission new work, and really foster people's practice. So Interrupting a Beam of Light was a 13-person group exhibition that I did at David Cunningham Projects while I was in graduate school. And it was an exhibition that focused on contemporary works that deal with phenomena, the nuances of magic, and the importance of retaining lore and myth in our everyday lives. And then, so these are just some examples of some of the work. The artists came from all over. Michelle Blade was in San Francisco, John Opera was in Chicago, Gigi Gatewood was in Rhode Island, I believe at the time, at RISD. And these were all young artists working with these ideas and what actually just happened within the show, which I don't have a great installation shot. I guess this is probably the best, but there were a lot of triangles just sort of came out of nowhere, and we just kept noticing this amazingness that was happening, and it sort of just, reiterates when you actually bring the work into the gallery, when you've just been looking at it online or maybe in a studio visit, and then they're all kind of come together. The installation just worked out so perfectly. I was just really happy. This image on the right, the John Opera, is actually in Buffalo. It's an everlasting flame. So if anybody ever comes to Buffalo, I will take you on that hike. It's pretty amazing. I moved to Austin right out of graduate school. I got a job at the Art House at the Jones Center, which then became the Contemporary Austin. And when I started there, I was the curator of public programs, which quickly became the associate curator, and worked on a number of shows. We had a lot of spaces. It's a space right downtown in Austin. I don't know, has anyone been to Austin before? We have an Austin liver at one point. And so it's right downtown, about 5-7 blocks from the Capitol building, across from the Paramount Theater, which is this beautiful, restored, historic theater, and art house at the Jones Center. The Jones Center actually was the Queen Theater at one point, and we did this massive renovation to it in 2009, reopened it in 2010, and so that's when I got there. This is a show that I did, Hybrid Forms. It was a group exhibition, and it was right actually after Art House at the Jones Center merged, or remarried, I should say, the Austin Museum of Art. And for a short time, nobody likes to talk about this, but we were called a MOA-Art House, which is the worst thing ever. The boards could not decide on what to call us, and that was the interim name, and just everybody hated it. So it's actually tried to be like stricken from the record, and so we just say it was the Contemporary as soon as we merged. But Hybrid Forms was an exhibition that I was able to work on because nothing had been scheduled. It was kind of one of these like crazy transitions, and my director asked me to do something with our collection. The Austin Museum of Art had been a collecting museum. Art House at the Jones Center had been a Kunsthalle, so they didn't have a collection. So I wasn't actually used to working too much with a collection, so it was actually an exciting time for me. So as I was pouring through it, I noticed this piece, which is a Namjoon Paik piece that was owned by Amoa, and it was called Zen for TV, and it's one piece that sort of triggered the entire show, which was looking at artists that were working sculpturally with media. So this sort of became the linchpin of the show, and I was able to pull out a few other pieces that were in the collection. This is a Kurt Mueller piece called American Dream, and it's actually a karaoke machine that you can say Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech, and what you're hearing is the cheers from the crowd in the background. And so it would be really amazing when you came out from the offices, because you'd be hearing someone like really loudly reciting it, and we'd all kind of go out and watch and add to the cheering. And the collection didn't have too many, unfortunately, media works. It was mostly paintings and sculptures and works on paper. So I was able to work with a couple of local institutions to borrow some work from them. And this is a Paul Pfeiffer piece, Miss America, which I really love. This was from the Linda Pace Foundation in San Antonio. And this is the piece where he erased Miss America. So you can kind of see, do I have a pointer? Oh yeah. This is Miss America's crown. So as the video progresses, it's kind of like a little bit of a GIF, honestly, where you just sort of see the crown floating in front of this ABC wallpaper at some event. And then this is Leo Villarreal's Horizon 24 that was owned by the Blanton Museum, which is the University of Texas's museum. And this piece was so wonderful. We had this amazing concrete floor, so the reflection in the concrete as it changed to, I think, 1 million different color combinations. At one point it gets all white, and then it goes back into the sequencing. So that was a really great show for me to work on, and sort of, as I now work again at a place that has a collection and starting to learn it a little bit better, I kind of go back to the show and think about how to, move things around. I have a really large interest in the intersection between art and architecture, and that was a really big theme in my curatorial practice. It's just generally a theme in my curatorial practice, but specifically when I was at a residency last year in Portland, Oregon, which I'll talk about. But this show, Seher Shah, who was a Brooklyn-based artist at the time, she now lives in India. This was sort of the first show that I did that really incorporated that theme. Seher really explored ideas of large urban relics in the landscape, such as monuments and buildings and cenotaphs. And this was sort of kind of a small survey, her first museum exhibition, where we picked 5 different works from 5 years of her the past 5 years. She makes a lot of work, but these were sort of the seminal pieces that everything else was based around. This is a detail of that grid piece where she and her partner actually, when they flew across the country, would photograph out of the plane, and then she would take those photographs and embed shapes into the landscape and really erase the landscape or add to it in some way. These are two really monumental pieces, geometric landscapes in the spectacle forest and then the mirror spectacle. And this was the first time that they were actually on view in the same place. And this is actually, she had a residency at the British Museum and Library and was able to get archival imagery from the Delhi Durbar Fairground, which was this basically when there was a coronation of a new queen in England. In India, they would erect this fairground where the coronation then came. When they came to India, they would have this ceremony. So this, she did sort of an inside view and an outside view using archival imagery and her own hand and sort of references from the time to kind of create these works. And I think I have a better close-up of this one. It doesn't really look that good in reproduction, but it's pretty amazing to see. I think the Brooklyn Museum owns this one, actually. And then this was her largest drawing to date, is a 6x8-foot graphite and gouache drawing called Object Relic Unité de Habitation. I don't know why the whole title isn't up there, I'm sorry. So this is actually, she took Corbusier's really famous Unité building in Marseille and basically flattened it, which is really amazing, and divided it with this big, massive piece in the middle. And she hand drew this. It took about 4 months, and she was suspended over the piece because it's so large. And then we were able to, I asked her to make one new piece for the show, which she had started experimenting with sculpture when she was at the Headlands Art residency in San Francisco. And so she created this object repetition line to distance piece, which is 1,000 cast works, sort of this reductive geometric form that she uses a lot in her work. She actually made it 3D and drew on it. So there's sort of, hopefully, I don't know if you can see it all. You can't really see in this picture, but what I really loved about this piece was we had these storefront windows, and so we had this lobby space, and as she was installing this, people would just kind of come and like watch her arranging everything. And it really doesn't look like that many, you know, when you get it, but after she arranged it, you're like, oh yeah, that is definitely 1,000 pieces. And it sort of, you know, when you looked at it from the inside and the outside, you know, it sort of resembled a city in a way, and just the repetition of the form was really interesting. This is Erin Curtis. She was a Texas, Austin-based artist when I worked with her. Now she lives in DC. We had a project space that we kind of dedicated as a Texas emerging artist project space, which was really great because it allowed us to kind of work with artists specifically from Texas. And this was part of the Texas Biennial in 2014. And Erin really marries traditional craft and textile work with, you know, her painterly installations. So she sort of has this hybrid practice. She's really influenced by, she spent a lot of time in India on a Fulbright, and so this two-sided piece, you can see the back here with the cuts in it, was actually inspired by when she was walking around. She would see women that had cut pieces out of their curtains and to like view the outside street but not be really seen. So that was sort of an inspiration here. And what she asked me if she could paint the floor, and I said, sure, you can paint the floor. And I came in on Monday and this was done like this, and I was completely blown away. It really kind of tied the room together, and I was super happy because it was sort of a weird box space with these front doors like this, where we put some outdoor sculpture that she had just finished out there as well. But it really kind of hold the room together in this way that was really important to sort of repeat this pattern. She also created these benches that you could sit on that was made out of parachute cord, but they're based on these traditional Indian benches called charpoy. In 2014, I also worked with Justin Cooper, who I met in Chicago when I was there for undergrad. And Justin is, number one, he's like the biggest goofball in the world. I really love working with artists that make me laugh. I mean, I'm sure everybody does. And Justin is a performance artist, but the first thing he'll say to you is that he's a drawer. He loves to draw. Like that's the number one thing that he does every single day. But he's really like Home Depot is his favorite store. That's where he gets all of his art material. And I asked him to work with me on this show at Test Site, which is a collector's home in Austin that invites a curator to then invite an artist or maybe a collective. It's usually like a solo project, and to do a collaboration. So I invited Justin to come down, and he didn't want to see the space. He didn't want to come for a site visit. He just knew he was gonna, we were gonna hang some of his drawings, but also that he was gonna make all new work with garden hoses, which is what he's really been working with for a long time, although he also works with PVC pipe and wheelbarrows and pumpkins and all sorts of really hilarious things. Plastic houlalés are really big in his work now. So we had a week to install, and I was able to get all of this garden hose donated from the best general store, Callahan's, on the way to the airport. Amazing. You can get like feed for your horse. You can get everything there. And we spent the first couple of days, we thought he was going to kind of create this huge snake piece through the house and out into the backyard. The one stipulation that happened with Lawrence, the owner of the house, was that this is actually a house that I need to have meetings in. His business is there. He has dinner parties. He needed the dining room table to be, open, a pathway so people could walk. So when Justin kind of really thought about that more, he started really interacting more with the architecture and making these discrete objects, which he had never done before. He had always been doing these larger installations. And so again, that was a really exciting thing for him and for me to be able to foster sort of a new vein of his work that now he's actually really interested in. I love this, how it sort of looks like it's going through and infesting the house, but in a very simple way. And then when you step through those double doors into the backyard, this is what happened, and you encountered this like sporadic installation. And what he does is he threads different size rebar through the hoses so then it can bend it, and they bend at different obviously angles, and everything is bent with his own body. But for me, I was able to be there all week and kind of help him, assist him a little bit, which is so fun for a curator who doesn't make art anymore to like kind of make art. So that was a really fantastic experience. Here's another view, and then another view, which I love that. This sort of was the first outdoor piece that I worked on, and so I was still living in Austin and starting to work freelance a little bit, but I had a project left for the Contemporary. We had a sculpture park that kind of came with this merger. And so I worked on this project for about 3 years with John Grade, who's a Seattle-based artist, and he really, I don't remember how his work got in front of me, but for some reason, I must have gotten an email. I sent an email to the gallery. All of a sudden, I had a book, and I was just sort of infatuated, and I invited him down to come do a site visit at Laguna Gloria, which is sort of at that point, and now it's turning a little bit more into, I would say, the de Cordova, we called it Grey Gardens at one point because it was overgrown, and there was lots of poison ivy and snakes and all these kinds of things, and it's on this peninsula that juts out into Lake Austin. It's beautiful. It was this woman's house that was then turned into the museum. So he came out for a site visit and was really inspired by the water and the wind that was kind of coming off the lake and onto the peninsula. And after many trials and tribulations, kind of came up with this piece, which is called Tree Canopy. And this, he sort of, he was like, let's use the trees. And so this was suspended actually in the trees, between 3 trees. We drilled through them and hung, I don't have a good picture of it, but sort of a rebar collar. But they're not connected. So when the wind comes in, actually the upper part of this piece shifts. So it goes from being a circle to an oval back to a circle. and it creaks. It's made of ipe wood, which can stand being outside for a long time, but also weathers really interestingly, and actually it'll look more gray probably the next time that I'm down there, since it's been about a year. And then this, you could actually step inside of it. So the bottom part was sturdy, so you could kind of just sort of stand and look up, and it framed the tree canopy in this different way. You could have this sort of singular experience in it, as well as you could watch people having that singular experience. And the light comes in through the top, obviously. And so this is what it looks like when it got a little greener. And what I really love is you can kind of see these people. There is a sort of a road that no cars can go on really, but it's sort of hidden, so you kind of have to go find it, which is really kind of a wonderful thing about it. Does anyone have any questions so far? So I'm happy to answer during this. Okay. If you do, just raise your hand. So I mentioned that I got this residency in Portland. It was at this contemporary art center called Disjecta, and it's a really interesting model because they don't have the money to actually have a full-time curator. They only have one full-time staff person, which is the director, and then a part-time gallery assistant, another part-time facilities person. So what they've come up with is having this curator in residence program for young emerging curators, which is really wonderful for young emerging curators because this doesn't really exist in a lot of places, and it's not just one show, it's actually an entire season. So you're brought there, if you're obviously I applied and I was asked to come and introduced to the community in Portland and given a budget, and basically you do as many or as little shows as you want. I did 4 exhibitions, which is sort of the norm, 3 to 4, but some people do more, performances or programming. The year before me was only 2 exhibitions and then a lot of performance that happened. The space is really wonderful. So this was the first show that I did. And actually, Claire Ashley and Bahar Yurikoglu, I found them both while I was here in Boston at the De Cordova. I was on the advisory board for their biennial in 2013, I believe, is when the last one was. And that was when the Paint Things show was up. Do you remember that show? Really amazing show. And so Claire was the inflatable piece that was down the stairs, and so I saw that work. And actually, she lives in Chicago, and we overlapped, and I never knew her work before, and so it was sort of that pleasant surprise. So this is an installation view, and you can kind of see how cavernous this space is a little bit. This is the entrance to the show. And then Bahar went to graduate school here, and she was one of the artists that Lexi was considering and that actually ended up being in the biennial, and so I saw her work for the first time just in slides while I was sitting in the dark room at the De Cordova all day, and I just wrote down the name, and I loved it. And so when this opportunity came up to pitch an entire season, I immediately went back to these 2 artists knowing that they would be a good pair and that they could really inhabit the space and respond to the architecture of it, because as I said before, it was sort of this interest in art and architecture and space and how artists change space. So this piece is actually, these are Claire's pieces, but Bahar did the lighting for this hallway. This is a big piece that Bahar made a new piece for the show called Aurum. And so it's plexiglass that's kind of embedded into the wall, but then she had filmed the plexiglass before in her studio and created a video that was then projected into the corner. And then at one point, Claire had actually just asked me, do you think Bahar would be interested in collaborating? And I said, sure, I'm sure she would. Like, let's get her on a Skype call. And we were all like in our various cities planning the show. And so Claire said, well, Bahar, I can make you an iceberg, because Bahar is really interested in the Arctic and had gone to the Arctic already. This past summer, she did another residency in the Arctic. And so Claire made this gigantic iceberg for her, which was just plain. She didn't paint it. Unlike these pieces, you can see that there's paint, that she does her own work on the Tyvek that she uses. So this just came with, actually, she put pockets in it and straps so that Bahar could put plexi pieces into it and then also project from 3 sides onto it. So it sort of created this amazing piece, and we called it B-15, which at that time was the largest iceberg in the world, which it still might be, I'm not sure. And this is just another installation view. But this is a pretty amazing space, as you can see, and it's kind of daunting, you know, if you're an artist or a curator working in it. So I was really happy. This was kind of, up to that point, the craziest show I think I had ever done, just because it was sort of really colorful, and there were these like large inflated objects, and there was light work, and it just sort of all came together. And there was a performance that happened where Claire actually makes, and I think she did one here too, people get inside these suits that she makes that are inflatable. And so we had collaborated with the dance, with 2 dancers in Portland on that performance, which was really great as well. So I said craziest show up until that point. This show was the last show that I did there, called Shutters, Gutters, Pipes, Channels, Drips, Drifts. I don't know, you get the point. I don't know why that got all messed up, I'm sorry. This is with Andy Coolquit, who's an Austin-based artist. He's a found object artist. He would hate that I just said that, but he uses a lot of found objects. He kind of scours his neighborhood in Austin. When he lives in New York, he does the same. He makes a lot of discrete sculptures and then kind of creates environments with those discrete sculptures. And so I'm going to show you a video, because it's really the only way to see this piece. I don't use a PC, so hopefully. Oh. Okay. Oh, why is that not showing? Sorry. You can hear it. Okay. Any idea, guys?
I think you gotta take it out of presentation.
Oh, take it out of presentation mode. Okay, hold on, sorry. This is, like I said. See? Oh. Uh-oh.
Did it just turn off?
No. Oh, there we go.
There it is.
Okay. So Andy, I was able to get him a residency for about a month in Portland at another institution, which was really great, to collaborate with C3 Initiative. And so he actually drove up from Texas, because he's like, well, I might as well have my van so I can go scour and get things. And as he was driving up from Texas, he was having the best time. He kept texting me all these pictures of like how beautiful it was in Marfa, and then San Diego and LA and Eureka. And then he gets to Portland, and it is pouring rain, like every single day. And so he was like, how am I going to make work? Like, it never rains in Austin. I mean, we're, you know, in a serious, serious drought. And if it rains, it pours, and then it doesn't rain again for like months. So he was just like, fuck it. So he basically, he made it rain in the gallery. He created this entire environment where he made fountains upon fountains upon fountains with all of these found objects. We had a boardwalk that you had to walk on, because if you walked off the boardwalk, you might get electrocuted, because there were all of these fountains were powered. There was this fan blowing around. It smelled damp. We had to wet down the boards every day. The gallery assistant had to wet down the boards like twice or 3 times, because they would dry. They would actually dry, which was weird. So there were people like watering cans. All of the fountains some of them were made out of pieces that he had seen picked up off the street. A lot of pieces came from like the Restore and the Reuse Store and Habitat for Humanity, and then Lowe's, basically. These pieces he found at a pipe distributor. They had pipes on them, so they actually had left that imprint, so he hung them to sort of create the circle. And then this was actually the first time that he's exhibited video before. So he was just walking around taking a lot of video, and ended up kind of showing a lot of that video. And then he made one video called All the Pipe Sculptures on the Internet, which is really wonderful, where it's just like flashing what he thinks are pipe sculptures. And then we had these 3 safety workers that had names, but I can't remember them now. One was like Jack. But they were sort of to kind of keep you on the path as you walked through. So it was, like I said, this was then the craziest show that I'd ever did. And what I really loved about it is that, you know, like I was given this residency so that I could experiment, and I was able to kind of do that with Andy. Okay, now I'm gonna have to find my place again. Sorry. Seen all this? Okay. How am I doing on time? Good? Okay. Okay, so that was Andy's show. So that was the last show that I did in Portland, and it was right at the time that I had moved from Austin to Buffalo, which my husband likes to say, from Mexico to Canada, which is basically true. So I arrived in Buffalo on February 27th, and what's really wonderful about UB is that we have two galleries. We have a gallery that's sort of a temporary exhibition gallery that's located in our Center for the Arts, where our art department, media studies, theater, and dance are. So it's sort of this like great center for all of the art students. And that's a 2-floor gallery. It's beautiful. When I got there, it was under construction because we had some problems with the building. Skylights started sliding off anyway. Long story short, I have new skylights. They're beautiful. But it was closed, and it had been closed for the whole year, and luckily the curator had left, so there wasn't any kind of backup to it. But we didn't know when the gallery was going to be open again because of construction. You know, you never know. So we thought November, and then about June, we then found out that it was going to be September. So I had started working on a show for that space, and luckily it was pretty ahead of schedule, so I was able to get everything ready for September. But what you're looking at here is actually a piece by an artist, Amanda Browder, who lives in we're in Boston. She lives in Brooklyn, and this is our other gallery, which is an old elementary school, PS 83, I believe, that this really amazing collector and gallerist bought in 1987. His name was David Anderson, so this is actually the Anderson Gallery named after him. He ended up donating the building, but he renovated the inside, so it actually looks, I like to say it's like old MoMA, and it has curved walls. There's not a corner like in the wall in the gallery downstairs, and then there's an actual like sculpture atrium upstairs. And we have classrooms, we have classes that are actually held there, which is really great for mostly arts management students, but also anthropology because we have an anthropological collection. So Amanda, I commissioned her to do a piece that was part of Splitting Light, which is the group exhibition that I organized in the other space, but that would live at the Anderson Gallery for a little bit. It's a temporary installation called Prismatic Illusions, and it's all donated fabric from Buffalo that we did a call for donations, and then she came and actually helped. We held public sewing days in the gallery so people could come in and help cut fabric and lay it out and sew it together and sort of just talk. And we had a blind guy come on his birthday. It was really amazing. It sort of creates this community. Amanda's really interested in creating community through public art that's like accessible. And so it was really wonderful to be able to work with her on this project and commission this project for, so this is technically the old front of the building. The new front of the building is in the back. So people don't really go around to this side, and this side actually just faces, it's in a neighborhood, it just faces a bunch of houses. So at the opening, I had so many people come up to me saying, I've never been on this side of the building before. I'm like, I love this side of the building, you know, the sort of the historic person in me is like, this is so beautiful. So this was up for actually only about a week because it's fabric, and it actually rained for 2 days and then dried out. It was amazing, but it gets ratty and things. We left the flags up. Well, we took it down and moved it to be part of the next show, Splitting Light. And so this is looking, if you're leaving the gallery. Aaron Curtis is the person that did that two-sided painting in Texas. I have all these windows, and so I asked her to, commissioned her to do a piece on the windows. And I'm sorry I don't have a picture of what the outside looks like because there's still scaffolding up inside the building, which apparently is coming down next week. So until that happens, then I'll actually like get better pictures of this. So I'm sorry about that. But this is a piece that she made with phototex, which is sort of this sticky photo, kind of like contact paper, but you can print on it. And then she also incorporated contact paper. This is an image of the Grand Canyon that she sort of spliced up and reconfigured. So this is a 10-person group show, and it was sort of about how color forms structure. So that's sort of the premise of it. So these are just some installation shots. I don't really have any individual shots in here, but the paintings are Nathan Green, and these, that just doesn't look very good, I'm so sorry. That's Anna Betby's is the rug pieces. She uses flocati rugs and burns them and dyes them. This is Gabriel Daw, who's a Dallas artist, and he does a lot of installation. Mostly his work is installation with, it's embroidery thread, and this is actually all embroidery thread. It's just like tons and tons and tons of it. And I had asked him to come and do an installation. He said he was a little too busy for the fall, which is understandable. And he said, but I have this piece, you know, I think it would make sense in the show. And it really is sort of the stunner of the show. And then these works are by this artist, John Knuth, who lives in LA. And actually, I'm so sorry I don't have a detail of it. But what he does is he feeds flies like colored sugar pigment, and they regurgitate onto the canvas and make all of these little fly specks. So he'll paint the canvas like the back color, and then all of the little specks are actually made by flies. That painting took 3 months and 500,000 flies. And then these are some more installation shots. This is foreground work is by Shiva Aliabadi, who's also an LA artist, and this is Indian holy powder that she uses on painter's plastic on the wall, and then just the powder on the floor. It's a David Benjamin Cherry piece, not the one I was talking about though, Lucy. And then you can actually kind of peek Amanda's piece in the back a little bit. I'll get another a show of that. This is a work by Hap Tivi. We have a little project space down like in this gallery, and so I asked him to come and do an installation, and these pieces change over time. This stays static, but you think it's changing. This is the other side. There's another screen and another, they're both in the corner. It's really very experiential, and it's sort of like is kind of the epitome of the show is within that space where it's just sort of meditative. It's really wonderful, and it changes the whole room changes color with, you know, as the piece is moving. You can kind of see it from this angle a little bit. And then this is the piece I was talking about, Lucy. Sorry, Lucy and I had a studio visit earlier, we were talking about this. This is another piece of Shiva's, this gold. This is actually, sorry, it's copper leaf that she rubs onto the wall, which is just really wonderful. And then in the back, we have this gallery called the Lightwell. So I was able to move Amanda's piece inside because the ceiling in the Lightwell is actually the exact height, weirdly, of the U.B. Anderson gallery. So she's never been able to show her work inside because it's building scale, and it's usually too big, and where is she going to have that work? And I said, well, actually, I have a place. So, and what was really great was she was able to reconfigure it in a new way. So it sort of became a new piece, even though it's the same. So that's actually what's up right now at my space that I just finished curating. And then I'm going to talk quickly about 2 projects that are coming up. One is called Field Contracts Design Competition, and it's a competition that I started with 2 good friends in Austin, Igor Siddiqui, who's an architecture professor and a working architect, and then Catherine Gavin, who was now the former Texas architect editor. She's moved to New York. But we decided, we were just having coffee one day and talking about art and architecture and life and everything, and Igor was telling us about this competition that he had been in New Orleans and how great it was that it fostered young architects. And I said, well, why don't we do it in Austin? And so we, you know, kind of went home, and then we came back and we're like, okay, let's actually really do it. And so it just became a way for us to kind of work on a project together and to, again, like I said earlier, I love to be able to foster emerging artists and, give them a place and maybe some money. And, sort of what's really great and what I have heard from Igor a lot is like when architects go into work for a studio, they're obviously not building their own projects. Maybe they have input, but they probably have other projects that are in mind that they want to build, and they just don't have the resources to do that. So this was sort of a way. It was open to whoever. It wasn't specifically for architects, but we did get mostly architecture submissions. We were able to partner with Pentagram, which is this big design firm, and they have an office in Austin. It was great because they did all of our amazing logo and design. And then the place ended up being, it's Circle Acres Nature Preserve, which is a remediated brownfield old landfill that Ecology Action of Texas owns, and they had wanted to do some sort of artist residency, and I was able to kind of say, well, why don't we just try this? This is a temporary exhibition, and so they're really excited. So these are some of the finalists. We had a jury of 5 jurors. We had over 80 applicants, which was really amazing because we just kind of pulled this out of nowhere and launched it, and with the help of Texas Architect Magazine and Texas Society for Architects, but really it was just us doing it. So this is Newhouse, and these are finalists, and so the 18 finalists as well as a couple of Curator's Choices are going to be on view at the UT School for Architecture in their gallery while the competition is up, so people can kind of see what the jury had picked, and it included like over 10 countries, Italy, South Korea, China, Australia, from all over the place. We had entries, and then this is another one called Compost. And really what the brief said was to kind of talk about low impact design and sustainability, and really thinking about merging like nature with architecture. So the winners, this is Roland Snooks, and this is Blurred Bodies. So this sort of hovers between the natural and the artificial. It's sort of a camouflaging piece that is based on algorithms of swarms. So like when birds swarm or fish swarm or things like that. And it's industrial in nature because it's actually steel that's fabricated. But this is obviously this is the prototype. I'm going down to Austin on Tuesday to install these works. This is duck blind in plain sight, which I don't know if people know what a duck blind are, but when you go hunting, that's what there's a deer blind, there's a duck blind. Those are all things that you kind of like hide yourself behind in order to, kill. So this is sort of, it's a piece that people can actually get inside, which is really exciting. This is Hybrid by OTA Plus, which is actually just one guy, Corey Beeg, and he was our only Austin winner. And this sort of mimics the surrounding trees and grasses. It's made on a lathe and then painted natural colors that are coming from the site. It'll sort of look like this part robot, part root sort of the thing. And then this is 99 White Balloons, which is my favorite. I probably shouldn't say that, but oh, sorry. This is, they're filled with LED lights that float high above the ground, and when people are closer, there's a sensor, so the light gets, brighter. And obviously, unfortunately, we're not going to have a lot of night time at the site. There's no electricity out there. There's like a composting toilet, and that's basically it. But now that daylight savings has passed, we're going to be open. Technically, it's just open. People can come and go hiking. There's 10 acres. It's really beautiful, but so people will kind of stumble upon this, but hopefully people will be out there a little bit later on. So that's something that I've been working on for about 2 years, which is really exciting that it's finally coming to fruition, and then we're figuring out what to do for the next, if we're going to continue to do it. It'll probably be in a different place, but it's exciting. And then the last show I'm going to talk to you about is one that I'm working for next fall, and that will be Lydia Akumura. The project is called Situations, and this is an artist that I was sitting at my desk in Buffalo my first week of work and missing the art fairs in New York because I had just gotten to Buffalo and I couldn't really say that, hey, can I go, can I leave to go look at art? And so I had my really good friend who very much knows like what I'm interested in, just send me anything that she thought while she was like going around the fairs. And she sent me this picture, and I was like, who is this artist? And she said there was no label. And she came back and she found out that her name was Lydia Akamora. And so I'm at my desk like typing, and then sort of spent the next hour kind of in this, you know, Google world of trying to figure out who this woman was, or is, sorry, she is living. I just can't believe I just said that. And, you know, really like trying to research her work. She's represented by a gallery in New York that actually focuses on older artists that are sort of under-recognized, which is really amazing mission for a gallery. And so she is a Brazilian artist, born in Brazil, but her parents were Japanese and they immigrated to Brazil. And she was born in 1948, so she's a little bit older. She's actually my mom's age, which my mom thinks this is very cool. And she has been working her entire life. I'm really interested in sort of geometry, abstraction, how the use of space is created through work like this. And so I feel like it was sort of one of those things that you stumble upon and you're like, who is this person? I need to know as much as I can. I want to work with them. Immediately, as soon as I met her in May, I just knew I wanted to work with her. And she's never had a museum show before. So this will be her first museum show in the United States. She has had one in Brazil. But she's really just still very unknown. This was, she worked, at the beginning of her career, she worked collaboratively with this two other guys, and they called themselves Grupo Trace. And this is their installation that they did at the Sao Paulo Biennial in 1973. And it's sort of where she developed her signature style of geometric composition in site-specific places. So the other works that I've shown you before, this has been remade in 2014, and this was remade in 2014 as well, but originally in 81 and 71. And it's really simple material, you know, it's paint, it's aluminum. You'll see that there's string involved. These are, she was able to get a scholarship and go to the Pratt Graphic Center where these works were made, and I'll show you better pictures of these, but that was an installation that she did. This is Prismatic Appearance from 1975. So she's started to remake some of this work because it was site specific, and it wasn't like she didn't keep the parts of it. She didn't keep the parts of the wall or the string or anything like that. She just really has the images. So she's been working with her gallery to remake some work. This piece hasn't been remade, but will be remade for our show, because I'm going to try and show like a variety of work that she's made over the past, years of her life. And then she did do a lot of work on paper. So this is Diagram of Evolution, which is a work on paper, and this is one of the details of it. A lot of screen prints, which is what she worked on when she was in Pratt. She did a lot of printing. This piece was at PS1 in 1981 and then remade in 2014. And then this was her major show that she had in Sao Paulo in 1984. She was invited to occupy the entire exhibition space that was in front of this new glass wall you can see that was actually built by Lina Bo Bardi, who was a famed Italian-born Brazilian architect. And Lydia was asked really very quickly, I think someone had dropped out. And so she said 35 days to make work to fill this exhibition space, which was really huge. And so she made several wall and floor pieces with steel wire, wire screens, wood paneling, and fabric, 47 pieces. In 35 days, she said she didn't sleep like more than an hour a night. She was in there like around the clock. This piece, which I find really interesting, and then this piece, which is this wire labyrinth screen that she painted, are two large pieces that we're going to remake and put in our sculpture atrium, which has a glass wall, actually, this sort of curved glass or slanted glass wall at our UB Anderson gallery. And I thought I would want to have her. This is something that I'm working on, like what makes the most sense for which space that I'm working in with artists. And so I thought she would be great in the UB Anderson Gallery in general, and that we'd maybe take some work from our collection that worked with her pieces. We have a lot of work on paper as well, and so I'm still going to do that. But then I thought about it longer, and I said, I don't have any corners. All of the walls are curved in there. So the upstairs of the UB Anderson with the sculpture atrium and the hallway where we hang a lot of work on paper will be Lydia's show, and then the rest of it will happen at the other gallery where the color splitting light show is right now, which is really great for me too, to sort of like connect those two spaces, because they have been a little bit disparate at the university, and sort of people don't think they're the same things because one is called the Anderson Gallery. So it's exciting for us to kind of do something like that. And it sort of started with Amanda's piece, having that on the building for a little bit. And something going forward we'll do a lot more. But these are just some other images, some small sculptures, and then this is a piece on the wall, which I really love. Going back to my love of triangles. This piece is kind of hard to see, but this is like steel wires that are actually on the wall, pinned to the wall. And then this is this mesh. So I'm trying to, at this point, like source where this mesh, I can get it here. So I'm working with the architecture department on that. This is one of those cubes that was hanging. And then this piece, which is really wonderful, that she actually did just redo. She was commissioned to do this originally in Bogota, Colombia in 1977, and then asked to go back to Colombia and redo it this summer. It's a three-dimensional like radiographic entanglement using glass and rope and paint and then graphite. So it's this really wonderful piece that I'm very excited to have, and we're going to put it in that gallery where Amanda's piece was. So it'll be the only thing in that gallery, and you kind of walk into it, it'll fit really just perfectly there. So that you can kind of see some details of the glass coming out of the wall, and that is another detail of that. And then she had done a couple of earthworks, and so luckily there's some places on campus that I've been meaning. We're starting a public arts commission, which is a whole nother project, but we'll do some temporary pieces of Lydia's during the show, at least during the first couple of months before it gets to be snowing and cold. But this relocation of the cube, and then this is the disappearance of perspective. So you can see that this was shot this way, and then somebody walked, and then you can see the line. So it's this really wonderful piece. That's my last slide. Well, actually, this is my Instagram handle. That's me and my husband in Venice. And then this is my dog's Instagram handle. So if you guys want to follow me or my dog, who's amazing. I do travel a lot. I look at a lot of people's work. I'm constantly posting images of what I like. So if you liked what you saw here, you can follow me and see what I'm doing and that kind of thing. Skeeter gets around a lot too, so he's pretty fun. But yeah, that's my talk. I didn't drink this water the whole time. Does anyone have any questions?
I have a quick question. What was the name of your artist who did the green garden?
That's Justin Cooper. He's wonderful. Really, really great person. And he does a lot of performance as well. So as part of that show, we did a performance at another space in Austin. He likes to dress up as a werewolf. There was also, his performance, he pretends he's a forest ranger, where he says he has a master of forestry arts instead of a master of fine arts, and that, you basically turn around anywhere in Brooklyn and you hit these masters of forestry arts, and he's just pretty hilarious. So definitely look him up. Any other questions? Comments? Nothing? Okay. Well, thank you guys.